Today, we have an opportunity to learn what we can do to participate and stop human trafficking. This is a very important issue because we have a community that is at stake. Our children are at risk. And this is very important information that we need to take in and learn how to apply to our lives. So I pray that you hear everything that our speakers have to say today. So we have Ms. Carletta Cruz. She's going to talk about the scope of the problem, recognize, report, and respond victim assistance. She has a MS and a BS in Homeland Security and Investigations, and she's a victim assistance specialist. We also have Annie Lobert, a survivor voice best practices for faith-based community. To take action, she is going to present on that issue. She is the founder of Hookers for Jesus, nonprofit organization. She's the founder of Destiny's House. She's a renowned author. She's internationally recognized expert and featured on national broadcasts. We also have Ms. Tammy Dow as well. She is going to speak on frontline help, human trafficking, nexus to missing children. She's an ordained minister. She's a filmmaker, a producer, a writer, an actress, a U.S. Army veteran. God's gonna forgive you that. I'm Air Force, retired police detective, and international leadership, domestic violence, and human trafficking. We also have Miss Brandy Bynum as well. She's gonna talk about the Blue Campaign, faith-based community initiatives. So learn how we can get involved and be more proactive with this issue, and that we can learn to be aware, see the signs. So she works for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Office of Partnership Engagement for the Blue Campaign. So they have taken their time out to give us this information, and I think it's vital. The church cannot just be all about church. We need to be active in our community, and part of our mission is to change our community and have an impact, and it starts with us learning to serve. So I'm just going to read one or two scriptures, and then I'm going to let Ms. Cruz come on and start us off. Psalm 72 and 12 through 14 says, "For he shall deliver the needy when he cried, the poor also and him that have no helper. He shall spare the poor and needy and shall save the souls of the needy." So the church is called to take care of those that are oppressed, take care of those that are in need. And this is a community that is in need. So regardless of what some may think, the church does play a role in this community and making a difference. And we need to learn how to do that. Psalms 82 and 3 through 4. Let me flip over to there. Psalms 82 and 3 and 4 says, "Defend the poor and fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy, deliver the poor and needy, rid them out of the hand of the wicked." So we have an obligation to take care of those that are hurting. We have an obligation to carry the burdens of others. We are to always do good unto the household of faith, and we are to be about serving our community. God says that love covers a multitude of sins, and we are a church about love. And this community that we're going to talk about today needs love. And not only that, we need to be aware of what the problem is, the scope of the problem, what the real issues are. We need to know how to identify when someone is going through and know how to help them. So with that, we are to be more than just hearers of the word, but doers. So I am going to turn it over to Ms. Cruz, and then I'm going to mute myself and turn my video off. So please pay attention to what these wonderful women have to share with us today. Ms. Cruz.
Thank you, Pastor McCoy. Good morning. My name is Charlotta Cruz. I'm the Victim Assistance Specialist for Homeland Security Investigation, as was stated before. First of all, I want to thank Pastor McCoy, First Lady Kim McCoy, lay ministers, leaders, friends of Abundant Heart Community Church for hosting this virtual event today. And most of all, I want to thank my colleagues who have diligently were willing to answer the call quickly when I asked them to help to come out on a Saturday. So I really appreciate that. Especially, this is a good time to have this event because it's during Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And lastly, I also want to thank my friend Kim Houston, who was also instrumental in connecting me with Pastor McCoy. Okay, so as stated, my history with the federal government spans 27 years, and my responsibility as a victim assistance specialist for Homeland Security, my area of responsibility is the states of Nevada and Utah. So in that, I work with minor adult victims of who have been harmed by such crimes as human trafficking, child exploitation, fraud, identity theft, and other crimes. I work to provide crisis intervention, emotional support, and connection to community referrals to induce power and ability on their road to recovery and or help them navigate through the investigative and prosecution processes. I also provide training to our agents on being victim centered and providing trauma informed care to our victims and placing more emphasis on the care of victim than on the investigation. So today we have some dynamic speakers and experts in the field that will share to you from their perspective on how to stop human trafficking. And this is a call to action for first base faith-based communities. The call to get more communities of faith involved in eradicating human trafficking in our community is a must. Many survivors have communicated how important their faith community was to them as a social, spiritual support system and protective factor to keep them while they were in such a terminalist lifestyle. And at times, survivors report their spiritual connection is the only thing that saved them and gave them some peace. Furthermore, faith communities are a powerful agent for social change. A belief in human dignity, a dedication to end injustice, and a commitment to care for the marginalized, vulnerable, and impoverished population are core principles that unite all communities of faith. These principles are also essential in affecting change to end violence, exploitation, and human trafficking. Just a warning, this training is about violence and other trauma related material and contains some and may constrain some language. So if you need to step away and practice self-care, please do that as needed. So today we'll be talking about outlining the HSI mission, scope of the problem, defining what human trafficking is, how traffickers work to exploit and target victims, the minors of human trafficking, and identifying indicators of human trafficking, and faith-based act now consideration, Las Vegas, what's happening in Las Vegas, and how to recognize, report, and respond. Okay, so that gave you a little bit about HSI and our mission and what we do. Homeland Security is the principal investigative arm of the Department of Homeland Security. And as you can see, our mission is to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle terrorist, transnational, and other criminal organizations that threaten or seek to exploit customs and immigration laws of the United States. And that entails human trafficking. This is just a list map of our global footprint. As you can see, we are worldwide, and that helped us to be able to work internationally with folks that are committing crimes transnationally. HSI mission is basically twofold. We want to proactively dismantle and disrupt cross-border human trafficking. and minimize the risk they pose as a national security. And lastly, most important, we want to employ a victim-centered approach. Again, we want to place identification and more emphasis on identification and stabilization of the victim as it is on deterrence of the an investigation of traffickers. So this is our stats from 2020, and we work in a quad of 4. We want to prevent, and that's what we're doing today. We want to go out and do provide outreach and training so people can know what human trafficking is and how to report it. We want to protect. We want to protect, go out there, find out what's going on, help our victims, and see what we can do to get them out of the life or help to stabilize their situation. We want to prosecute. We want to go after the people who are committing these crimes. We want to go after the buyers because, as we know, if there were no buyers, we wouldn't have this problems. And lastly, we want to partner, as we are doing with you today. So the scope of the problem. What I do know is that what we know is that the last 2 years there has been almost an 800% increase of reports of child victims of sex trafficking being exploited with the aid of technology online. So as we can see, there has been some anti-human traffic work being done with Snapchat and Google and other social media platforms to advise them with what's going on, and also for them to come to terms with they need to provide better protection when our youth and folks are getting online, because that's where the traffickers long to. They get online and they communicate with innocent people. Human trafficking is also known as modern day slavery. Is a dark industry that abuses and exploits men and women of all ages. When a person escapes from a trafficker, he or she is left with many years of past trauma and oftentimes substance abuse issues, homelessness issue, maybe not having a place to go or a stable situation. So this is happening everywhere in the United States. In urban areas, suburban areas, and rural areas, it's happening in our backyards. There is a myth that it's only happened to foreigners, but it's also happened domestically. It is estimated that, go back, estimated that 5 million adults and children around the world suffer from sexual exploitation. And up to 18,000 to 20,000 victims are trafficked into the US each year. So even though we hear more about foreigners being trafficked, believe me, it's happening. It's happening. These traffickers are really targeting our kids just as their other kids or our adults as well. We have learned that the entry age into sex industry is about 12 or 11, depending on what statistic you read. And also what we know is there are more brown and black children that are being trafficked. And these are statistics, so we can't really say that they're actually totally accurate, but these are the number of people that have come forth and reported human trafficking or being a victim, because we know a lot of victims do not self-report, and so we can't really put a true number on it, but we do know that it is happening in the United States. Okay, so let's start out by defining what labor trafficking is and sex trafficking. So human trafficking is composed of labor trafficking and sex trafficking. We hear more about sex trafficking, but let's talk a little bit about labor trafficking. So labor trafficking definition is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining a person for labor services to force, fraud, or coercion. Sex trafficking entails commercial sex act induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or if the person is under the age of 18, there is no, regardless of what happened, there's no, you don't have to prove elements of force, fraud, or coercion, because we know children under the age of 18 cannot consent to sex. We want to also make it clear that immigration status or citizenship is not an element of human trafficking. It can happen to anyone. So when we talk about labor trafficking, that's again a scheme, plan, or pattern intended to hold a person in fear of serious harm or coercive means to compel them to work. So with that, what we've seen is, for example, we've seen nurses that have been recruited from overseas, they come in with their credentials, and so they have a person overseas recruiting, working for recruitment, human resources people to get nurses over here. So they help them to get the proper documents to come over here and get in a contract with them, and secure that, and tell them they're going to pay them a certain amount of money, etc. And get their documents, and then they'll have them a place to stay, etc. But once these nurses arrived over here, what happened was the person that was supposed to that met them at the airport to take them to the place that they were going to live at, and introduce them to where they'll be working and things like that. They first of all, they took their passport and their documents, and they said, hey, I know on this contract you think you only owe me certain amount of money, but in reality you owe me $50,000. And for that, as you're working and living in the place that we're providing, we're going to take 60% of your income, and you'll have to pay us for a certain amount of money. So these nurses were not did not come here for that. They were told that something else was going to happen. So again, they got them over there here, and then they tricked them into working, and they were taking all of their money, 60%. In some cases, they've taken even 80% of these workers' money. So you come here, you don't know anything, you don't know about the law. You've been told if you contact law enforcement, you may be deported back to your country, and that's not what you want, because what you're experiencing here, although it's bad and you're being coerced and frauded, it may be better than a situation back in the States. So you're stuck in a situation where you don't know who to trust. And that's just an example of labor trafficking. We've also seen examples of labor trafficking here in Las Vegas. Usually it's within the hospitality industry. Sometimes in the shops with the nail technicians, and or massage parlors, and or in restaurants, and or in hotels or lodging areas. So we've had workers that were brought here to work under the table, if you will. And not only were they not being paid um, proper uh, wages, but they were working in unsafe conditions in our housing, or made to live on the property or site where they're working. And sometimes what we find out is the storefront could be a coffee shop, could be a nail shop, it could be a restaurant, but in the back there is sometimes a one room where you have, or a small closet where you have 10 to 15 people sleeping or trying to live in that little small area on mats, and basically been given little food, and they may supposed to make $15 an hour or whatever, but they're only seeing maybe $2 of it. So and told when they can leave the site and those type of things. So that's when we get into the labor trafficking. Okay, so sex trafficking can consider as any circumstances where perpetrator involved recruiting, enticing, harboring, transporting, providing, obtaining, advertising, maintaining, patronizing, or soliciting a person for that purpose. They are guilty of a federal sex trafficking of an adult. Okay, this is true even if the victim previously consented to engage in commercial sex. So again, I want to stress with child sex trafficking, I've heard things in the field mentioned like, oh, that's a child prostitute. There's no such thing as a child prostitute. A child does not wake up one day and say, you know what? When I grow up, I want to be a prostitute. That's usually not what happens. Or I want to be a sex worker. So anyone who is engaged in recruiting or engaging in a commercial sex act with a victim under the age of 18 is guilty. Does not have to be elements of force, fraud, or coercion used. Okay, so when we look at sex work versus sex trafficking, there is a slight difference. When we look at sex work, especially in Las Vegas, because there's a myth that um, sex work and prostitution is legal here. It's not legal in Las Vegas. It's legal in certain counties in Nevada. So we always have to clear it up. But with sex work, both sex work and human trafficking operate within the commercial sex industry and involves males, females, and gender minorities. Not all sex workers are trafficking victims. Contrary to the popular myth, not all workers are out there because they want to be. Their circumstances may cause them to be out there. And these circumstances could include economic hardship, food insecurity, substance abuse issues, homelessness, whatever. And especially when you look at kids, sometimes we see children who have been kicked out of their home for different reasons, for being labeled a, I don't know, unruly child, or having dysfunctional things going on at home. They may have run away, or may have recently disclosed to their family or parents that they're LGBTQ, and they're put out the house. So they're out there, and what we see with them is what we call couch surfing. They're out, they don't know where to go, and usually within 48 to 72 hours of a minor being out on the street with no place to go, or homeless, or ran away from home, or got kicked out of the home, we know that they're going to be approached by a trafficker. So they're out there, nowhere to go, no food, not sure what to do. And so you have this nice, supposedly Samaritan may come up to them and offer them a place to stay. And then in that place to stay, eventually they asking for favors, sexual favors, etc. The kids don't really identify that with being trafficked or exploited on. They're just looking at it like, oh, I'm just couch surfing, and this person is doing me a favor by allowing me to a place to stay, or food to eat, or whatever. So we need to be able to educate them and help them understand what it actually is. It's exploitation. Okay, so back to the sex work. So sex work situation may transition to trafficking if the elements of force, fraud, or coercion are introduced for the purpose of inducing forced labor, commercial sex act. By law, all minors engaged in a commercial sex act or sex trafficking victims. Okay, so when we look at sex work, it's a choice. It may be a choice or a circumstance. Again, everybody is not out there because they want to be. It's the circumstances that drew them out there. Between consenting adults, and they don't identify or are not defined as a victim. Sex trafficking, again, force, fraud, or coercion. So when we look at labor trafficking, that can include any kind of work. It can go from just violation of workforce things, and we know that what wages we're supposed to be we're supposed to make. We also understand some of the labor laws, like, okay, if I work overtime, I'm supposed to get paid or get some kind of compensation. So some of us know some of that. So sometimes it rises from minor workplace safety, health issues to more severe violations or abuse and exploitation. And that's when we call it start to rise to the definition of labor trafficking. So to compel labor or services, trafficker use force, threat of force, or serious harm. They compel a reasonable person to perform a labor of services to avoid harm. They may use, if you don't, I need you to, and we've seen this in California, where they've had laborers work, brought there to work agriculture, and they have them working on a field from sun up to sundown, and without the proper safety equipment on. Also, we're giving them minimum breaks, small amounts of food to eat, and if they don't perform the job, they could be physically harmed, or threatened with physical harm. They can be threatened with, I will threat to deploy you. I'm going to call the authorities on you, and certain things like that. So that's when it rises to that occasion. So also when we talk about human trafficking, we have to always, we like to share the difference between human trafficking and smuggling, because sometimes the two get mixed up. So so when you have trafficking, it is uh, it does not require border crossing. So in that case, we have victims who have been who have been trafficked here in Las Vegas, and they may never have left the state of Las Vegas. They may be in North Las Vegas. They may have not even left the community, but we know that they're being trafficked. And then sometime in trafficking, we see victims being moved around the circuit. They could go from Las Vegas to Dallas to Houston, New York, but it's not required. And it can be a foreign national or a citizen, and an exploitation based. Again, we talked about force, fraud, or coercion. They tricked into it, um, or coerced into it. And it's a crime against a person, and it's involuntarily. They are not it's involuntarily. So, and when we talk about smuggling, that's usually when it's voluntary, it's a crime against the state, it's transportation based, and it requires border crossing, and it involves foreign national. So let's just talk about the two. So in situations where we've seen foreigners coming, I'll say from El Salvador or Mexico, and so they meet a coyote. They say, hey, I can get you across the border. It's going to cost you X amount of money, and I can get you a passport, and they work that out. So that person agrees to be border cross, go across the border, and they know it's a crime. So it's voluntary. That person is agreeing to this. So that person gets smuggled, make it over to the United States, and go on about their business, and so on. So, okay, so that's smuggling. So when it starts to be trafficking, is if that happened and the coyote they made a deal with the coyote to smuggle them across the border. And once they reach the border, the United States, that person take their passport or take their documents and say, hey, I know you paid me for the passport, but you are now, I own you, and you're going to have to work this off. You're going to have to sell drugs for me, um, until you pay off $30,000 or $40,000, or you're going to have to work in a commercial sex industry to pay this money off. So that's when it starts to turn into trafficking. It's involuntarily. Okay. So okay, so traffickers can be of any, or victims could be of any age, race, ethnicity, sex, gender, identity, nationality, immigration status, cultural background, socioeconomic class, or educational attainment. Um, Trafficking can be found in legitimate or illegitimate industry, and may intersect with other criminal activities such as drug trafficking, human smuggling, or money laundering. It can be associated with relatives. We've had situations where, or cases where uh, family were actually trafficking their children. Family, friends, gangs, transnational crime, and it's also it can be a transnational criminal organization. So with relatives, what cases we've seen, in one case there was uh, I think she was, by the time we met her, she was, I think, about 15 or whatever. I think around 15. But anyway, she said she remember when she was about 9 or 10, her mom, she was in her mom's room, and her mom was dressing her up and putting on makeup or whatever. And then her mom took her to her bedroom where there was a gentleman waiting, and her mom said, be nice to him. He's going to take care of us. And that was her introduction into being trafficked by her parents. And we see her by her mom. And we did see this happening with families that need that are on that are substance abuse users. So they using children to get substances or drugs that they need, also to pay the rent or just for money, period. So we see that. Also family, friends, gangs as an initiation, and uh, they sell it as a way they're going to protect this person or this person coming into the gang. And in order for the gang to protect you, you got to show your loyalty by sleeping with these people or bringing us money in this matter. So, okay, so I talked a little bit about vulnerable youth and human trafficking and youth. So again, the traffickers, they lurk around looking for vulnerable youth. So these traffickers are hanging around where we wouldn't think they would hang around. They hanging around where kids normally hang out, like at the food mall, at the mall, period. They are near the schools. Sometimes they have recruiters inside the school that are recruiting kids to come work for them or to introduce them to them. Okay, so these traffickers also, I talked about how they exploit kids online. We have so many cases where a kid is online, a trafficker start communicating with them, and they propose to be a friend. Um, it can happen two ways. They can start talking to them and gaining information about them and gaining trust. And so they do that by asking questions. Oh, so what do you like? Oh, I see on your Facebook page or whatever. I might be dating myself saying Facebook, but oh, I see you like Hello Kitty or you like this, and they'll start the conversation with them. And then pretty soon they find out more about the kid. Like if the kid is having some issues with their parents or school, or oh, I can't, and the kid might say something like, oh, I'm so upset with my parents, they're making me wash dishes. And so they come in as a good Samaritan. Oh, if you were with me, you're so mature, they don't understand you, I understand you. And if you were with me, I would never make you do chores. And eventually they build the trust. And then they will do a couple of things. One, they may try to entice the kid to send them a sexual exploit picture or something like that, or send me a picture of you, and it'll progress to something more explicit. And then once they do that, they'll hold that or threaten the kid, hey, so if you don't do this for me or come out the house or sneak out the house, then I'm going to tell your parents or your school, show them these pictures. And the kids, their brain is not so developed at that age. They want to be liked. Their brain is not so developed to think through this whole thing of, I can tell somebody, I can report this, because they already think, oh, I did this, I'm the one, I'm going to be in trouble. So they go along with it. And sometimes they talk these kids into coming out the house. Okay, so you just sneak out the house, and they kind of coach them into how to do it, and run. And sometimes they talk them into running off with them, or hey, I just need you to do me a favor, type of thing. So that's what we see with youth. And I can't go over every scenario, but that's a lot of what we see. So we do need to talk to our kids about safe internet usage, and how they can be exploited online, and just talk to them. And that conversation should never, never stop. Okay, let me see my slide. Okay, let me see. I'm not sure what happened, but can you guys see the slide? Okay, so who are the traffickers? The traffickers can be anyone who profits or receive cash or benefits in exchange for a sex act. They could be called a trafficker, pimp. They could be a family member, boyfriend, girlfriend, or buyers who purchase a sex act, thereby fueling the commercial sex industry by profit. Okay, so why human trafficking? According to the FBI, sex trafficking is the second fastest growing criminal industry just behind drug trafficking. It is easy, low risk. Many traffickers still believe the high profit margin to be worth the risk of detection. And it's profitable because of the supply and demand. So the supply is the victim, which is moved around like a commercial, like product. A victim is moved around like a product, and demand is the person who's buying the sex, or as we sometimes call them, the John. So the trafficker has this supply of victims, and usually when a supply has, let's say, a person is trafficking drugs, so they got the product, they sell it once, and then they have to replenish it, and then spend money to replenish it, and then make money off the sale of it. But with human trafficking victims, they do not have to replenish, because they have the victim who's providing a service or the product, and they move them around like products, and they have, on average, in each stable, they have about 5 to 7 victims. So they force these women, or men in some cases, to go out and perform commercial sex acts up to 15 times a day. And you an average, let's say this on the low end, $100. So they don't have to replenish them. They just send them back out the next day. And then so the money, you can see how the money continues to grow and grow and grow with little or no detection. So it's a high reward, low risk. Okay, so traffickers prey on victims with little or no safety social net. They look for victims who are vulnerable because of maybe their immigration status, maybe they're living in a single parent home, maybe they have low self-esteem issue, maybe they could be doing really well in school or on their job. They just looking for love, and they come in as this romantic person who starts to take them out and make these false promises to them, and then they start to believe it. They start showering with designer bags, dinner, etc. And after some time, they build their trust. And after some time, the trafficker is like, okay, I'm ready for a return on my investment. So they'll turn to that person and say, hey, remember you were having problems, or I've been paying the rent and I've been doing what I can for us, but now I've run into money problems and I'm going to need your help. And usually it's like, well, what do you mean? Well, I just need you to go out on date with a couple of people, just one time. And that's how it starts. And that person feel compelled to help them because, first of all, they may have actually fallen in love with them. And 2, they've been showering them with all these gifts and taking care of them. So it's psychological. So he helped me, so I also want to help him. So, and please understand that traffickers can also be females as well. So again, they invest a lot of times and they trick them into some loving relationship before revealing their true intent. And then pimps' use of psychological manipulation compared with physical control can leave a person feeling trapped and powerless. So your partnership can make a difference, and I'm not sure why that came up, but these are some partnership that we would request of the faith-based community will be to partner with a anti-human trafficking group in a community and work in concerted effort with them to combat this problem. 2, we ask you can go on social media or any platform and post anti-human trafficking campaign messages, posters, etc. 3, you can host a anti-human trafficking Bible study or community event where you talk about what it is. 3, another way you can help is you can write our senators and representatives about anti-trafficking laws to support them, or things like that to help. 4, you can do a charitable donation to a organization for anti-human trafficking, or you yourself can actually run something where you take donations to actually give to anti-human trafficking organizations. So those are just some of the things that you can do. Lastly, you can educate yourself on what it is and dispel all the myths out there. Be a beacon for change by going out and telling people, your family members, friends, whoever you come in contact with, that human trafficking is real, is happening to men, boy, women, girls, and men, boy, girls, and women in our community, in our backyard. So these are some of the general indicators of human trafficking. Inconsistent conflicting history, if you're talking to someone, unwilling to or hesitant to answer questions, accompanied by a person who was not let the person speak or talks for them, talks over them, the evidence of controlling or dominating relationship. We've seen children who are being trafficked. They go to school Monday through Friday, Friday night, they traffic Monday morning, they back at school. And so if you're in an education setting, you see a kid that's sleeping or absences or some things like that going on. These are not all proof of human trafficking, but they could be indicators. Labor trafficking, a person that say that they've been abused at work, you witness abuse, that person's not being able to take adequate breaks, etc. Sex indicators, does not have appropriate clothing or for the weather or venue, has tattoos. And I'm not saying everyone that has tattoo is being trafficked, but usually it's done in a form of branding, which has words like daddy, property of, for sale, person that's using language that's common in the life of commercial sex industry, etc. Okay, and she's going to cover blue campaigns, so I'm not. And could this happen in Vegas? Yes, we know it's happening in Vegas. Again, most people that Vegas is the top entertainment city. And what we know, we have a lot of visitors that come here, and they think that prostitution is legal in Las Vegas, and it's not. So in 2019, and I'm sorry, I don't have the 21 stats in front of me, but there were 116 identified minors of sex trafficking, 114 were female victims, and 2 were male victims here in Las Vegas. 59% were Black, 13% Hispanic, and 25% Caucasian. Okay. 82% of them were identified as runaway. 3% of 3 of them, 3 of them were 13 years or younger, 113 between the ages of 14 and 17, and 102 of those children were local children. So they were not even from any other community. So, and okay, I have the 2021 stats for adult victims of human trafficking here in Las Vegas. And they 48% were between the ages of 18 and 24. So there are a lot of young adults, as you can see. 52% were Black, 25% Caucasian, 15% Hispanic. So that's kind of the layout. So yes, it does happen in Las Vegas. Okay, so if you recognize human trafficking or think that you potentially see a human trafficking victim, first of all, we don't want you to be the Superman or Superwoman to go try to recover them. Wouldn't want you to put yourself in harm's danger. Just jot down or observe the who, what, whens, and wheres. If it's an emergency, call your local police force at 911, or if it's just something you want to report that you've observed in your neighborhood, or you think, you can always call HSI tip line, and that's the number. And I've sent some of this information to Pastor McCoy so he can share it, but that's the number. If you call our tip line, it's 24/7. And with that being said, you don't have to identify your name if you don't want to, but we just want to know who, what, when, and what happened. Okay, if you come across a victim or you want to try to support someone and you don't know what to do or you don't know who to call, you can always call National Human Trafficking Resource Center. They're open 24 hours, 7 days a week. They are strictly confidential. They can provide you with resources if that person is seeking a place to stay or safety or police assistance. This is a number that you definitely can call. And I also sent Pastor McCoy a list of local resources as well. So just know that HSI will respond if you called us. Everyone can act, no matter how small, can make a difference. We all have a responsibility to take action. Let's work together to end human trafficking and exploitation and strive for a world rooted in equity, respect, and caring. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Annie Labar, who is a fierce advocate in the community who speaks from the heart and from lived experience. Every time had the pleasure of hearing her speak, she always have a kind word to share and a beautiful smile. I learned something new and I'm continually moved by her work. So without further ado, Mrs. Labar.
Hey everyone, can y'all hear me? I don't think my little headset's working. Let me
Yes.
take these off.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'll just have to not use these. For some reason, my little iPods aren't working. Okay, I'm gonna.
Annie, we can hear you. We can
Oh.
hear you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, let me get my my PowerPoint going real quick. Can you guys see this?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay, good. Okay, so actually, my name's Annie, and I know Charlotta and Mr. McCoy gave a really good introduction. I'm really, first of all, honored to share. By the way, Charlotta, how much time do I have so I don't rob anyone's time?
It's 20 minutes.
Okay, got it. So I will stop at 12. 12. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is actually at the Destiny House. I did a photo shoot last summer and it was really hot that day, by the way. And we're in the backyard by one of the offices. We have a home for women that are trafficked. And I'm going to just share my story really fast. So I wanted to show this because this is what I looked like when I was 1 year old. And you just don't think when you look at a baby or a child that, oh my gosh, one day they're going to be selling themselves on the Las Vegas Strip, or they're going to become a stripper, right? Or they're going to become exploited, beat down, enslaved, and to the brink of death, fighting for their lives. So the next thing is my mom. I have to say something great about her. She prayed for me while I was being trafficked. She had no idea that I was being trafficked. I'm actually the bottom person on the part of the screen in the background. I have a sister and two brothers. My sister passed away in 95, but I'm at the bottom with the short little haircut, blonde girl. And this is one of our properties in Wisconsin that we grew up, and we eventually bought property there later as a teenager in my life. And then this is my dad. Now I have to explain about my dad. My father was a very strict disciplinary. I'm on the right with the blue dress, by the way. And he was very military style. My dad was in the Air Force. He actually beat my mom in front of us children, and he was a closet alcoholic. So that is my kind of like background of being vulnerable to trafficking. Is I never felt truly loved or seen or heard. And I didn't know what a real dad looked like in my life, even though he was there. There's something with child abuse that happens, even if a parent's there in the home. We all know that if you abandon your child, even while you're living there, by not paying attention to them, not telling them you love them, not giving them physical affection, that can damage a child's upbringing. And also, I lived in fear almost every single day. So this is me. I just wanted to bring up this faith-based part because I loved church. I went to church since I was a little girl. And I remember this vacation Bible school I went to in Minneapolis. That's where I was born. It was a great time for me because my mom said to me, do you want to go to vacation Bible school. And at the time, as a little girl, I loved it, Jesus. Like Jesus was kind of like my dad in a way. And you can see my little smile. I loved it. Like I wanted to be there with the other children and learn about Jesus, but also, make crafts and cupcakes. We all love cupcakes, right? So we're going to just transition quickly into what happened to me, the sex industry and sex trafficking. The reason why I put those two definitions together or statements together in the slide is because the sex industry, me and my personal opinion, and many of my friends that have been trafficked, is basically the sex trafficking industry. It is super rare, a very, very low percentage that you do not get trafficked in the sex industry. Eventually you will. And just to reiterate, what Charlotta did a great presentation on trafficking. I looked at this wheel for the first time, probably about 10 years ago. And I knew that I was trafficked, but to just see the definitions on this wheel in the double standard of labor trafficking. So they both have similarities, right? It's almost identical. And I think the only thing that is the difference is you're being sold for sex. So basically almost everything on this wheel I went through, except for the language barrier. And my first month into the sex industry, I was actually a teenager. And I was working 3 jobs. I had graduated high school, believe it or not. I was 18 years old. That's one of my best friends. By the way, her and her husband run a church in Minneapolis now. I'm so proud of her. She's the bomb. She didn't want her face being shown, so I had to cover it. But I ended up working 3 jobs. I wanted to go to college. I know that sounds weird. I'm a white girl. You have a lot of opportunities and everything like that. However, my family really didn't have a lot of money. My dad got let go of the Air Force. And so he ended up working at a different company and started moving to Wisconsin with my mom. And we lived kind of like a poorer lifestyle. We actually had government cheese. I remember going to high school and having those little slips to get food. And it was so embarrassing. So you know what I used to do? I used to starve myself and not take the food because I was embarrassed in front of my friends to actually show that I had paid lunches. So that was one thing that started kind of like an anorexia nervosa type of thing with me. And actually, as a teen, I started starving myself because I thought I was fat. And we all kind of go through that. Ladies, we know our self-image, and which makes me want to bring up sexy culture. You know, sexy culture is hypersexualized culture, and sex trafficking have major ties. And what it is it's a culture saturated with sexualized images of girls and women that objectify the female body. And this results in a type of sexuality that is inappropriately imposed on girls through media, magazines, videos, films, music, fashion, social media. The fallout, however, this is what we need to know, of this phenomenon may be a factor that drives child sex trafficking, adult sex trafficking, rape culture, and objectification of women. And you want to know something? I just did a presentation on this last weekend, and I talked about Marilyn Monroe and, Madonna. And in my time, because I'm going to age myself, of course, in the 80s, our woman that we looked up to was Madonna. I looked up to Apollonia from the movie Purple Rain with Prince, and I was, close to Minneapolis. So I really wanted to be these women. I felt like it was empowering because I honestly feel that I didn't have any sense of who I was inside. I didn't know who I was in Christ. I didn't understand that I didn't need to be someone, to copy someone, to be of value. Well, we don't know this when we're very young. So I chased money. I chased trying to make money for college. And I ended up getting caught up in the sex industry. And I went to a nightclub one night with my girlfriend and we had fake IDs to drink, and I met our first traffickers. And so I started to work in Hawaii. This is where one of my girlfriend's traffickers took us. I got turned out in Hawaii and came back to Minnesota, quit all 3 of my jobs. And then I started stripping and working the escort services at night. So I was craving free expression. I started doing drugs. I started partying heavy. This is actually my first apartment. You can see the 2 joints in my hands. I just believed I had the right to be free because I was away from my father and I felt free all of a sudden. And then Las Vegas. This is where Las Vegas, like Charlotta said, Honestly, we are in ground zero for trafficking. In our state, we have the highest per capita, according to the study done. I believe it was 2018, 2017, they did on Backpage before it was shut down. And we were the number one per capita place that people were getting trafficked in our population. This is me actually in the Shark nightclub right after I had this boyfriend that I met at the strip club in Minnesota. And he actually was out on assignment going to pick up more trafficking victims in Chicago and Minneapolis. And I was on, it's what they call automatic. And I went out to the nightclub with my girlfriend. And yeah, you can kind of tell I'm in the sex industry. I just kind of wanted to show like the massive difference of what I look like now. Obviously, I had no clothes on back then. So at this time I'm being trafficked. I left my trafficker. This was after 5 years. He beat me down and brought girls into our home. It's called the Stable. And I finally escaped. Now, I know I look happy here, but I'm actually not. And my hair is very short. Now, you saw how long my hair is before. I left my trafficker and he kidnapped me, put me in a trunk, brought me to a pimp's lair. There were six pimps there. There was all their girls were there, their whole stable. They were looking and observing me getting beat down with a poker from a fireplace. I was getting pistol whipped, and he proceeded to take a razor, and I was stripped naked. I know this is kind of graphic, and he cut all my hair off, and you can see the result right there. And this was me actually in Minneapolis at a Mexican bar called Chi-Chi's on Hennepin Avenue with my girlfriend, because I escaped my trafficker, and I was kind of like making a pose like, I'm free now, you can't get me. And even though I escaped him, I went back eventually. And this is one of my parties that I had in Minneapolis. And this is when actually I was renegading. That's why I said renegade party girl. We all had mates. Now, the young lady that you see in the kind of tan suit, she was not turned out yet. My two other girlfriends there were turned out. And we all left our pimps and we were renegading at the nightclub on New Year's Eve. And actually, I have a story about that young lady, the one that hadn't learned how to work yet, is she actually got turned out by one of my pimp's best friends. And she got sued by a buyer because her pimp had her set up to trick this very wealthy trick into giving them all kinds of money and credit cards. And he sued her in court and won. And I'm trying to help her get that reversed right now. Actually, it's really sad. She's in debt for a lot of money because of this buyer, even though she was being trafficked the entire time. And I think that's very unfair. And I'm sure all of you would agree. And then I got beat down. This is just when I first got hit by him in Minneapolis, this was my first black eye. And that's actually a couple days after it healed, but my whole eye was red on the inside of it. You can kind of see the black on the edge. I still didn't believe he was a pimp back then. It's like I was so naive and I was in love with him. So after I left my pimp, I was alone for a little while. And then I got with another guy that was just as abusive. He became my pimp for the next 5 years. He actually worked in a show here in Las Vegas, a very famous show that some of you might know, in a hotel that's no longer around called the Riviera. I was really skinny here because I was going through chemotherapy. And I say mental health trauma ignored because I had no idea that I had taxed my adrenal glands and I had severe complex trauma going on. And that's what caused my lymphoma. So then the reason why I got out is because, believe it or not, I met a buyer that liked me. And there I am in my brunette hair and my little wig and my attachment. He took me to a concert called Yanni by this artist named Yanni. And it like really helped my mental health, believe it or not, like, because the music was so soothing. And I got out of the industry and started working in the automotive industry for the next 8 years. And unfortunately, my trauma still hit me. And I started doing cocaine. I had a lot of panic attacks. And there I am. And we had just worked on a Carroll Shelby Cobra, continuation Cobra for the Carroll Shelby factory. He had like a contract with them. And he had signed the car. That's why you see a signature on the dashboard. And I was kind of proud of it, but I was higher than a kite in this picture. Still not realizing that I was trafficked, believing that I chose to have abuse done to me. But you know what? guess what? On August 2nd, 2003, boom, I surrendered my life. I overdosed on cocaine. I started getting trafficked back on the strip again for the next year, but I surrendered my life, overdosed, and there is life after darkness. So what's really cool is that eventually I realized, hey, I need to help my friends. In 2005, I started Hookers for Jesus, survivor led. There was no safe houses back then, and not a lot of people were doing this. And so I felt it was my duty as a woman of God and a woman of faith that I needed to go back out there and tell the ladies that I used to work with and ladies that were currently working. And of course, young men as well. Listen, God loves you. He forgives you for everything you've ever done. And there's nothing that can ever separate you from God's love. And that's true, right? So I got married in 2009. There's my husband. He's so handsome. Ozzy Bear. He's in a band called Striper. And I got married. And yes, I wore a white wedding dress because when you are a new creation, you're a new creation in Christ. And old things have all passed away and all things become new. And you are a virgin in Christ again. So Destiny House started because, again, I wanted to bring ladies to a place where they could heal. It's a long-term program that is transitional into transitional living, to more independent living, and ladies can stay there from a year up to 2 years. And then we're trying to get a new house called Dream House for independent living. And we're still looking for a house right now, but this is just one of our examples of our property. And Catherine, of course, our AG came and saw us. And so here we get to our faith-based best practices. So this is something that just the top of my head, I thought about what could I do to share with any church? Hey, we're doing a great job right now. We're educating the congregation. This is our main thing that we need to do is educate, educate, educate. You cannot get enough education and re-education and reminders every year and every month. Like Charlotte was saying, post on social media, teach people what this actually is. Prevention. This is something because we learn, we can help prevent it. And we can be part of that prevention by calling 911. If we're seeing signs of trafficking, be part of the solution. Help facilitate the rescue or the repair, or whatever has to happen to that person that you see that's being trafficked. And then, of course, protect and prosecute. We need to protect the victims of trafficking, the victims of human trafficking, and we need to prosecute the buyers, right? And the traffickers. We need to get and make people accountable to stop this atrocity. Because if we don't do that, this thing will continue and only grow. And of course, volunteer. This is something that we desperately need at Destiny House right now in our organization. We need volunteers, people to step up to the plate, say, hey, where can I fit in? Where can I help? Can I help you guys watch over the ladies at the house? Can I help you on outreach? Can I donate items to outreach? Offer your services. So many people in our community have so many talents, obviously lawyers, dentists, doctors, teachers, whatever it is. It's something that can be offered to any person that's coming out of trafficking, because usually what happens when they are being trafficked, we all know that those services aren't available and they have no way to get the help that they need. But if we have our community come together as a village and help each person on their journey to healing and offer them help with their credit, right? Getting a resume put together to get a normal job, helping them apply for college. It's something that we desperately need. And then, of course, I'm going to just rally this again. Besides volunteers at HFJ Destiny House, apply for a job at a nonprofit or that's working with trafficking victims. There's a lot of jobs available right now. And even at our organization, we've got like 3 positions open right now. And then, of course, donate items and finances to the causes that are fighting trafficking, or do a fund drive for pick a charity every month or pick a charity every couple months of what you believe the people that are doing direct services to the victims of trafficking. And then lastly, this is another perspective. If you are a congregation that wants to help with trafficking and you want to serve and work with the faith-based initiatives, this is one thing that I do not do. We do not do at Destiny House. We've never done it with our org, is don't force your Christianity or your beliefs, your religious beliefs on victims of trafficking or people that are recovering. it can seem like it's the right thing to do. Oh, you have to believe this, but it's really not. They've been stuck into a situation where they feel they've been coerced and they've been tricked and forced to learn something. They have to make the choice. And that's one of our policies. We never force that on any of our clients we work with. We just share our stories. And of course, don't judge. We do not judge the journey. We do not judge where they've been and why they've done what they've done. And even if they were part of the trafficking situation and eventually became a victim, we don't judge their bad choices or whatever has happened to them. We love unconditionally. I just want to encourage everyone. This is something that is kind of hard to do sometimes when you've helped someone for a couple of years or half a year, a couple of weeks, and then you see them go back to the same lifestyle or back to drugs or back to their traffickers, and they're mocking you and they're like, oh, you didn't really help me, or they're even talking about you behind your back or posting on social media. Let me tell you, I have gotten tested so many times to just shut my mouth and still love, because eventually that person will come around and say, you know what, you were right. I was being trafficked. I was being abused. I just didn't see it. And now I know that I was, because you shared with me and you opened up my eyes. And, sometimes that might not happen, but a lot of times it does, especially with the victims that we've worked with. The prodigals, we know the story of the prodigal son coming home, and the dad getting the ring and the robe and the steak ready. And then the brother getting really mad, like, oh, you didn't do that for me. Well, dude, you never left, right? You never left. But this little girl, this little boy left, squandered everything, and needs to come home to a place that's safe with no trauma, no danger. And so we need to be that person, that congregation that opens up our arms to the wayward and the people that are being trafficked, even if they go back 5 times, because the stats say 5 to 7 times. Now, we don't know what it looks like for faith-based, because I believe that stat is like sliced in half. And actually, we're all the victims we work with. I mean, we've worked with thousands over the years. I've been doing this since 2005. I have never done like a stat on how many were changed by the faith-based model of helping the trauma get healed. And so that's something we're probably going to be doing soon in the future. But the last thing, and I want to explain what I mean by this, don't be cultish. Sometimes we have churches and sometimes certain religions that if you do not do what they say and you don't follow their rules or guidelines, you are cut off from the group. You are excommunicated, and unless you come begging and pleading, oh, please forgive me, I promise this, that, and the other, you're not let back into that group. Well, we cannot be like that with any victim of trafficking or any survivor that's struggling. We have to always reach back out, even if they don't reach back out to them and say, hey, we're here for you. If you need anything, please give us a call. Here's some resources. And I've got some friends in the police department if you want to press charges. We have to be that type of congregation, and as a faith-based entity, to always have open door policy, no matter what's happened. Now, of course, any violence or thing like that, and any threat of killing someone, of course, we're not going to say, oh, you can just come right back in. But any other situation, we need to have our arms open and ready for anyone that's ready to come back. So yeah, I wrote a book, and I'm sure a lot of you know about it already, but this is my book and it's my story, and it has trafficking training in here as well at the end of the book itself, but it's more in-depth story about what happened to me and how I got trafficked in Las Vegas. And yeah, this is us, Hookers for Jesus, Destiny House. And then I have a podcast and a little TV show called Pink Chair, and it's on CTN. It's, and actually someone here has been on it, Hatamia. She was awesome too, by the way. I love that interview. This is aired in Las Vegas and in Tennessee and now Florida on the Superstation, which 3.4 million viewers, which is really awesome. So that's it. For more information, give us a call, go to our website. You can call me or text me, email me. If you'd like to volunteer, we'd love to have you. Partnerships and donations, and of course, just any words of encouragement, we welcome that as well. And I just wanted to share lastly, that right now we have ladies in our program, and we have one white girl, an Asian lady, 2 Hispanics, 1 Black girl. So it's true. It's a type of industry where everyone's at risk. And gosh, I would love Charlotta to know about the actual percentages of Asians that get trafficked as well for trafficking. All right, that's it. Thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I have a question. Will our pastor have, or you said reach out to you at Destiny House? We have some items that we want to donate
Oh,
right away. Bedding, clothes that, someone could use. And, and it's good stuff, with the tag still on. So,
wow.
and we want to give our time. We want to give what we can. We believe in the cause.
Thank you.
Kudos to you.
Thank you so much, Kenja. I really appreciate that.
Actually, this is Kenya's mom.
Oh, okay.
And Kenya's godmom and Kenya's daughter. Kenya is studying.
So what I'll do is I will get with Miss Cruz, and I will make sure that I have all of the ladies that are speaking today, that I have their contact information, and I have a bunch of flyers and email addresses and resources now. I will make sure all of that is available to anyone that is interested in supporting these women. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, thank you.
I want to keep it.
You have a raised hand, Pastor McCoy.
Let me-
Felicia Turner.
Okay, thank you, ladies, so much. Very insightful. I do have a question for Annie. I work in one of the local high schools as a counselor. So when you said the sexy culture, definitely is something that we see on a regular basis. But in one of your last PowerPoints, you talked about prevention. What is it that people who have a lot of contact with teens can do in the line of prevention? What would you suggest?
You know, the one thing that I focused on with my training last weekend was to be informed as a parent of all the social media and of course the smartphones. What age are we giving our children smartphones now? I mean, I've got friends that give their kids smartphones at 8 years old. So there's so many social media sites. And if we can give our children a prevention by training on all the social media sites and what a trafficker does and how he recruits and grooms them online, which is huge now because it's their best way to get a hold of our kids. And then also warn them of the dangers of dressing sexy. And I'm not shame blaming or slut shaming anyone here. We have to teach our children, especially our young girls, that showing your skin is going to attract danger. Okay. And that they're going to be at high risk for sexual exploitation. So for me, that's one of the preventative measures. If I was told this, because we had no social media back then when I was growing up, we only had our television and our magazines, and of course the nightclubs, and then, the underground nightclubs. And so no one had any idea, I think, that this was going on the way it was and how we got recruited into the sex industry. So the social media thing is pretty much a devil's Pandora's box, as far as I'm concerned. But it's a tool too, though. It's a tool for good. So we can prevent it by teaching and educating and equipping our children how to prevent it from happening to them and their friends.
And if you don't,
I'm sorry.
one quick thing, Annie, you mentioned grooming. Explain to them what grooming is. I don't think everyone understands that concept and how that is used to put the children in a position subtly and over time to mentally change them and affect how they see things and their beliefs, and it sets them up to be more vulnerable. So explain to them what grooming is.
Yeah. So even, and then I'll take it from a real quick media complex type of grooming. I was sharing last weekend that I told them that the media groomed me before I became a trafficking victim. So I was taught by the television, radio, the songs. I was a big, and still am, a hip hop fan. And it really groomed me to believe that I was a sexual object. Okay. So the thing online that happens with people, grooming is when someone is you're being approached basically with a relationship, like, oh, if you do this, you're going to get this, and for me, it's like called love bombing. You just give, someone something that they really need. You look for the biggest hole in their heart, and you look for the vulnerability, and then you just start to, like, let's say on Facebook, let's pretend that I'm a trafficker, and there's a young girl, she's got a cute outfit on, and she's got booty shorts, whatever it is, and the guy's like, hey, you look really hot, you're cute, I think I'm falling in love with you. And then she's like, what? And she's texting him back on Facebook, and then he's like, hey, send me a picture. And she sends him a picture, and he goes, hey, I'm going to send you a card, like for Starbucks or for maybe Target to go shopping for clothes. And so they're just love bombing you with all these compliments. And then maybe she's going to meet with this person in person, actually, and he's showering her with gifts. And there's no trafficking going on yet, just a bunch of gifts. There's a relationship started, there's trust being established, and pretty soon you get so deep into that relationship within the next couple of days to a couple of weeks to a couple of months that this young girl or young boy has such trust in this person that's showering them with gifts and affection that they normally aren't getting at home, or they're in a foster care home, or they're a runaway, whatever it looks like. And now they trust them. And so that's when the trafficking can start to take place, because now that person can just trap them and say, hey, you owe me. I bought you all these clothes. I sent you all these gift cards. I'm helping you make money. And so now it's something that someone can be easily exploited. So if that makes sense, I mean, physically, the definition itself, what does grooming look like? Like, if I just Google it and read it to you guys, it's real simple. I probably didn't describe it the right way, but it just gave the right examples. It's preparing someone basically to be abused. It says grooming is when someone builds a relationship, trust and emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. Pretty much what I said without saying it. So yeah, that's what grooming is.
You explained it well. My name is Kim McCoy. I'm Pastor McCoy's wife. And I noticed that Hookers for Jesus is with Benny Perez.
Oh, no, we're not. Okay, that's my former church, because we're in Las Vegas now. So
Okay.
we're not with him anymore, but
So
they are friends of ours.
So we can still go through you with the, okay. And that's important that you mentioned the latter part of your presentation regarding the clothes and everything, like Kenya's mom, Rosalind, is going to do to donate. That's very important because I work with the Nevada Partnership Youth.
Yes, it's a great
the
organization.
homeless, yes.
Mhm.
And they mentioned, I'm trying to work it into where the reason they're attracted to the pimp and why the organizations are not as, what word I want to use, attractive, is because the pimp pays for hair, nails, and everything to be done.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Great point.
if we can try to, as volunteer, trying to work that where we get a grant. I know a couple of hairdressers and nail girls that actually go to before pre-COVID would go to hospitals and clean up people and women that were dealing with this situation at the hospital for volunteer work. So somehow if we can provide those services, I would like to work with you in regards to that.
That is really, really awesome. We have a hairdresser that just did the girls. A lot of the girls want to get their hair colored like purple and blue. We were like, okay, because they saw my hair color. Of course, they're like, I want my hair like Annie.
It's pretty.
Now, just to remember this, everyone here, is that this culture of dressing up is big on Instagram. Getting your hair done, getting your nails done. And yes, we are competing not only with the traffickers, we're competing with the culture. So what do we do as citizens of God? We have to create our own culture that's attractive, obviously, but we have to teach our youth, no matter what, who they are in Christ. You don't, I know I'm all fancy and I have bling on and everything, but I always teach our ladies, listen, it is not who you really are. Who you really are is inside and who God created you to be. Okay. This all is a facade. It will fade. Trust and believe when I look in the coffin or the ashes that you made after you die, you're not taking any of this with you. But yeah, it's unfortunate that for me personally, it was something that really took me down a bad path, wanting to be like a movie star or like a famous musician. So yeah.
That's
So
the word I was looking for, was competition.
yeah, it's major competition.
Mhm.
I have one more thing to add. Based on what you guys just discussed with the competition of what kids are looking at. We used to call it the fad, what the fad is. I might not be able to do acrylic, or I might not be able to airbrush, or I might not even be able to color. But one thing I can do is I can help anybody and everybody tap into self-worth. And if I can play a role, or not even play a role, be an example, let me be that example, because everybody has a past. Everybody has a history. And this is something I'm glad my daughter put us on the Zoom call this morning, because it's a part of me. It's a part of who I am and where I came from. I'm not ashamed to say it. Everything that you talked about in this Zoom, except for being prostituted, I've been there, done that. So if I can help someone through giving my time, my money, my items that I'm no longer using, let me be there. I mean, I want to be, like him and I said, I want to be made whole when I see my father. I want him to make me whole, and I want to do the work. So yes, please sign me up. I am there 150%, because I can relate, truly. I can relate with every last one of them. And thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cruz, I'm gonna turn it back over to you so that if there are no more questions, so we can introduce the next speaker.
Okay. Let me. Okay. Okay. So, good morning, Tamia Dow. Tamia is an ordained chaplain, award-winning filmmaker, screenwriter, director, producer, actress, award-winning best-selling author, talk show host, internationally award-winning leader and difference maker. She has received the following awards: I Lead Susan B. Anthony Leadership Award, WEF Icon Women's Creating a Better World for All, and Worth Fighting for Leadership Award recipient, Las Vegas 2019. She has over 25 years of police experience, which includes military and civilian law enforcement. She holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and is a master graduate of Rapport Leadership Institute. She retired from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department domestic violence as a domestic violence detective. She is sought after international speaker and trainer. She trains both citizen organization and law enforcement officers locally and international in the areas of human trafficking, labor and sex, domestic violence, threat assessment, stalking, and personal safety for women and children. Tamia is a best-selling international award-winning author with 13 complete books and 3 current book projects. She's helped over 50 authors recognize the accomplishment of being a published author. Being Tamia believes everyone has the right to live life free from violence and oppression. This is her life mission. While working as a domestic violence victim detective, she encountered victims of sex trafficking who had been misidentified as domestic violence victims. She now actively works to assist victims and increase awareness. She's partnered with many local human trafficking nonprofits to help in outreach and awareness campaign. She has been part of the Southern Nevada Human Trafficking Task Force since her time on the Las Vegas Metro Police Force. Prior to working with Sarah Jane, Tamia worked with Love Remembers, which is a community education and outreach ministry headed by a survivor of sex trafficking, Jody. Jody continues to minister nationally, sharing her story of captivity, escape, and advocacy. Since retiring, Tamia has been traveling around the world learning about challenges women face and women and children worldwide. She has presented training throughout the U.S. and overseas. She is actively involved in increasing awareness of violence and control use. At her retirement ceremony, a great honor was bestowed on Tamia when the Nevada Governor Brian Sandoval proclaimed February 1st, 2012 as a day in honor of Tamia Dow in the state of Nevada to recognize her service to the community. In addition, the Clark County Commission Nevada proclaimed February 20th as a day of her honor. Tamia continues to give back to the community she served by conducting educational training. Her heart virtues are justice, education, and empowerment. Tamia is available to appear on your TV rodeo show or podcast to speak and to present to as a keynote speaker at your training or conference. It is her pleasure to tailor anything your organization needs or to your benefit. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Tamia. Tamia, you will not ever catch Tamia without a wonderful hug to give or a smile on her face. She's very active out in the community, and she not only talked the talk, she also walked the walk. Tamia, please.
Thank you so much, Charlotta. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm super excited to be here. I also want to thank Pastor McCoy and the First Lady for having this event. It's an awesome, amazing event. I love listening to everyone. I've had the blessing of being part of Charlotta's events before. And then Annie Lobert and I are very good friends. I love Annie. I always love listening to her because every time I learn something. Annie, also, I want you to know, and please remind me, I have hearts for each one of the ladies in your house. I have been to visit Destiny's house a couple of times and met some of the young ladies that are in there. Let's see what else. Helped with Hoopers for Jesus. Absolutely, just to love Annie. Oh, and sat in the pink chair with Annie Lobert. So that was truly a blessing. Let's see. So I've thanked Charlotta. I've thanked each and every one of you for coming here right now on a Saturday afternoon. You could be anywhere else in the world doing anything else, but you chose to come to find out more on how to really help the people that come into our path. Now, as a chaplain, as a minister, knowing that this is faith-based, it is so important for us to realize that people come to us broken. And I liked Annie spoke a little bit about that, about the trauma, about them not really even realizing that they are victims. And what I wanted to point out to you and speak a little bit more about that in a few minutes is that we have both victims and predators that are sitting in your pews. They are working your aisleways, and they are recruiting from your congregation, right under your nose and before your eyes. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But one of the scriptures that I always like to share, I also do personal coaching, spiritual coaching, business coaching, and I always share this, and it is the keynote scripture I say for our lives is Jeremiah 29:11. We probably all know it well. Yet I will go over it again for those who might be listening in and don't necessarily know of this particular scripture. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And this is the encouragement I encourage us as spiritual leaders for one another, whether we are lay leaders or actual pastors and chaplains, and holding those positions where we're reaching out individually, counseling and things such as that, is that we must encourage, just like Annie said, we must let people know that we love them unconditionally. There can't be any judgment, and it must come sincerely from our hearts. And this is what's so important about when it comes to faith-based. So again, like I said, I cannot thank you guys enough for making the choice to be here. So Charlotta gave you a little bit of my background. I was working with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and I worked specifically right before I retired for the last 10 years of my career with victims of domestic violence and sex trafficking. I still now work with it. I'm coming up on celebrating my 10th anniversary, because you saw February 1st and February 2nd of 2012. The governor and the county recommended, or actually recognized me for my time in service. And this was for me, my time in service as a police officer, giving back to the community, doing these trainings, because I was the one who actually went out to churches and other police departments, NHP, those kind of things, and trained on the awareness for officers on recognizing victims of domestic violence and victims of sex trafficking so that they could assist them. And in fact, that was a little bit of what I talked about on Annie Lobert's program in her pink chair, about how important that was. But even more so is, I know I'm a person that's a big, person about talents. You know, the parable of the talents. You have, one was given one was given two, one was given, five, however you read it. It's two different versions. But the thing was, they were given talents to use. And the way I look at it is, when I retired in 2012, I was not supposed to say, "Oh, thanks for the talent. Thanks for all the training. Thanks for all this knowledge that you've, allowed me to learn, Lord. I'm going to put it on the shelf and go to Maui," right? spend that, most people retire and they just go travel, right? The Lord showed me how to do both, should we say. The Lord showed me how to stay active in giving back to the community, whether it be the faith-based community and doing programs like this, because I've been blessed to be able to do a lot of these type of programs, or whether it's been working with law enforcement and educating veterans, people who deal with, or may not even realize they're dealing with, victims of sex trafficking, because you never know. Now, I know it's been mentioned a few things that would help you recognize someone who may be being groomed or may actually be in the life right now. I don't want to, beat that down, but I do want to bring it to your forefront when it comes to inside the church, what you should look for, what you could see, and not just inside your church, but in your neighborhood, or in the grocery store, or something to that effect. Don't always assume, and I love it. We've had such well-rounded speakers that have touched on so many things. Don't just assume because someone is dressed hoochie. We used to call it hoochie back in the day. I don't know if you guys still use that word, but it just means they're not dressed. Basically, they have on like minimum everything, and of course the goal of that particular person is to get attention. Even though, because we've put them out of the church before, right? I'm sorry, you don't have enough clothes on, you got to go. You're going to distract, not just the women and the men. You need to come in proper attire when you come to church. Now, when I say that though, if that person is coming, that's a new person that's come, let's just put a robe on them, or put a jacket on them, or what I'm saying? Bring them in, bring them in, help them be appropriately dressed. You know, if you think about that symbolically, you know, that is what we are called to do as ministers. You know, they come to us broken. They literally come to us naked, if you think about it. You know, most of them who are struggling and broken, they literally come to us naked. And we have to come and wrap that robe around them, you know, to cover that that they thought was all of them. You know, they are taught, beat down, led to believe that they are just a commodity, you know, just a dollar bill, that the only worth they have is what they can give away sexually, you know, that kind of thing. And it takes a long time to process that out of our young people or anyone when they get older, even still, it doesn't go away. You know, that's why when people will see somebody who is a sex worker who might be out there prostituting, you know, or dancing at the club or whatever, and in the mind of an adult who's not educated like you folks are by being here today and learning, you know, you're thinking, oh, well, that's a choice that person made. But when you rewind it back and you go back to when they were introduced to that lifestyle, when they were introduced to using sex and becoming an object with sex, that's when you start to understand that there's a child in that 20-year-old, 30-year-old body that has been programmed for years that the only worth they have is to sell their body, to get someone to give them money, to scam people with sexuality, right? So for us as faith believers, our real goal is to remind them strongly of who they are in Christ. Yet, like Annie said, and that's the blessing of being a chaplain, we kind of go out. You know, we're boots on the grounds. We're outside the four walls of the church. So we meet them where they are. And that could be on the corner of Tropicana and Lindell. You know, it could literally be in the midst of what they're doing. And it's not our goal to snatch them, you know, from the curb right then and run away with them. Number one, not doing that because it could be very dangerous for a chaplain to do that. You know, I have prior law enforcement background, but I will still pick up that phone, you know, and have the law enforcement officers deal with that because, you know what, I don't have the backup I used to have, you know, can't get on the radio and say, boom, they know right where I am and they come. Yet we are first responders, spiritual first responders when it comes to victims of sex trafficking. Now, she mentioned that I am a award-winning filmmaker. I make sure that my films speak about issues of domestic violence, sex trafficking, and also cyber stalking, because that is something that we just went through this whole period of time where we were on shutdown, lockdown, right? Everybody had access to everything through the computer. That includes the predator. So one of my films is called Meet Me After School. And in Meet Me After School, I talk about how a predator, literally, he ends up going to the park one day. And of course, it was a dramatic depiction that I wrote, but it talked about how he got each one of the characters in the story. One child he got off of social media. It was mentioned. They get these, you give your children, I hope it's not you, I'm just gonna say you, okay, are giving your children access to the internet and therefore giving your predators or the predators access to your children. And that is what the story Meet Me After School was about, was predators were following on social media. You know how the kids are, you talked about the dressing up and the bling and all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, oh, I have 1 million followers. Your children should not have 1 million followers. Your children should not have 20 followers. And you should know all of their followers. And if you do not know their followers, they should not have a social media account. But what I also want to make you aware of is just because you think they don't have a social media account, trust me, they do. Throwaway phones cost nothing nowadays, right? We give our kids money. Their friends have money. Before you know it, what we tend to find is that the children use a separate phone that has their social media on it. They use another name and their friends know what it is. And they are getting recruited through that. They are seeing, as you said, that the kids with well, I don't have that. I don't have, nice hair and designer this. And I'm not getting a chance to go to all these nice places where children shouldn't be anyways. But once they get dressed up and they go there, they feel like an adult and a grown up. And these are the same young people that are sitting in your pew. These are the same young teenagers that were part of your youth group, but you haven't seen them for a while. These are the same young people who you have the predators in your church sitting down next to, doing, as Annie described, the socializing, the grooming of them. You know, after church, let's go have something to eat. After church, blah, blah. So what is the young person telling their mother? Oh, mom, I'm going to go with Sally and we're going to, go to McDonald's or whatever, right? But that's not where they're going. They're going, or if they're going there, they're going with this person. And bear in mind, it can be a male or female. The recruiters are male and female. Do not be confused. Do not think that, oh, it's not a guy. It's that lady who works at Bank of America. I don't mean this, I'm not trying to spirit Bank of America, but it's that woman who's the sales clerk that's talking to my daughter, and she's got a daughter too, so it should be okay. No. Be very wise. We are called to be wise in what we do and how we deal with the people, the sheep, the people who are entrusted to us, because we too, as faith leaders, have to pray for discernment. We have to pray and ask the Lord to give us guidance and direction and insight into what is happening with the people that have been brought into our lives. And when I say that, it's like, a pastor can't necessarily see his whole congregation or her whole congregation, but what she can see and what she can feel is from her leaders. So all of us that are leaders must be mindful of that. We must be in prayer, because we know that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. And we know that the enemy is working every single day to snatch our young people or to snatch whomever they can. They don't really, the enemy doesn't care. All he wants is to destroy that soul. So we must be good keepers of our young brothers and sisters, and to ensure that they are able to know that there is someone who cares, someone who is out there, someone who is educated and aware and in tune to be their angel. Because maybe they need you to speak into their lives. So continue to pray for that discernment, pray for prophetic insight from the Lord as to how and who you need to deal with. Because trust me, you know how faithful our God is. The Holy Spirit will tell us, and we need to be very mindful of it, because you can save a soul just that quick. We never know what's going on in a child's head. And that's the thing about teenagers. They don't really talk about it unless you bring it up. And once you bring it up and start the conversation, you will learn a lot. I had the blessing of doing that, sitting down with a bunch of youth at another event that I did like this, but I did a breakout group with the youth, and they gave me stuff I didn't even think about, that most parents don't think about. Now, if you're sitting out there trying to figure out, how do I actually become more involved? Annie gave you some brief insight, but I want to share with you some of the things that I do as a chaplain, but you can do it just as any leader within the community. And that is, part of Las Vegas is it is a draw. It is a huge draw for sex trafficking. We have major, huge events that people come in town believing that this is a place they can come have sex, and there's nothing against it, because people, as was mentioned, do not realize that it is against the law in Las Vegas, in Clark County, to be with a prostitute or hire a prostitute. Both are crimes, okay? But people don't realize that because they watch TV and they see all this stuff, so they think, oh, we can come here. So the big basketball games, the big concerts, the big football games, the big game, which is coming up February the 10th through the 12th, that is, the big game is the Super Bowl. We actually do something in connections with Nevada Child Seekers. So write that down, Nevada Child Seekers. It's called the Big Search. And we go out and we look for vulnerable children who are currently missing, usually young girls and young boys between the ages of 13 and 16 that are considered extremely vulnerable. We go out, and when I say we, you could be a part of the we too. We educate the teams, we train the teams on what they're supposed to look out. The teams go out in pairs or foursomes. They go safely together to different establishments around the community. They go out on the strip and actually look around. I discovered one of mine in a McDonald's. I went into McDonald's with pictures like this because you'll be given pictures. And I went into McDonald's with a picture like this showing the young lady. And these happen to be young ladies, but it's pictures of boys and girls, all of the ones that are currently at the time that we search vulnerable. And when I showed it to the McDonald's clerk, very close to the strip this McDonald's was, oh yeah, she was just in here yesterday, and they described who she was with, and I was able to pass the information on to the team, and they passed it on to Metro, and the person was recovered within 12 hours. So our goal is to get together. We get together for 2 days during the big search, the 10th through the 12th. And everybody, like I said, is educated. We go out and we look for these missing children. And the blessing is, and we look actually all around the community in areas that we know children are being trafficked. Come, I encourage you to come is the point of that. I have been a part of it for 5 years since it was established, and it's a blessing every single year to see these children brought back home. So that is a way you could be involved. There's also a Mayor's Faith initiative for sex trafficking that exists. They meet once a month. A lot of times it's virtually because of COVID, but it still exists. And there's also an event that's coming at City Hall at the end of this month that I will give to Pastor McCoy when he talked about the reference information. I'll give that to him too. And then let me think of some other ways. As part of the chaplaincy group that I'm in, we actually work with an outreach with Metro. We do part of the recap. So that's also another way to reach out. But I believe Annie gave a pretty good overview. I wanted to let you know specifically what I do specifically to help. Besides making films, I actually, like I said, do the big search. And I continue to do things like this. I also like to speak to youth groups. So if that's something that rings a bell, really that you're interested in, that would be great. And let me see, I want to make sure I'm mindful of my time and your time. So if there's any questions, I told you about the big search. I told you about the big event. Yeah, so if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. I thank you for your time. Are there any questions? Have we lost our moderator? Hello?
I don't, there she is.
Charlotta, are you there?
Okay, is that better? Okay.
Now we can hear you. Yeah, I'll just let you guys know, if you want to find me, you can find me at Chaplain Dow on Facebook, Chaplain DOW on Facebook, and that's CHAPLAIN on Facebook. You can find out more about my films at 8 Spirit Productions, which is also on Facebook. And if you want to follow my movies in progress, then join me on Instagram at Tamia_Dow.
Tamia, can you please, are you able to add that to the chat as well in case they didn't get it down?
After I'm done. Yes.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So any questions with my fellow faith-based folks about what to look for in the pews, basically? But I was the whole key thing is I wanted us all to be aware of the fact that it is literally happening under your nose. It really is. I've heard people tell me that that's where they met the person who ended up trafficking them for quite some time, and that they continue to still go to church. You know, just like Annie was describing, the person goes out on the weekends and then they're back in school on the next week. So we need to be looking for these particular young people who are extremely vulnerable, because we are charged with being our brothers and sisters keepers, our young brothers and sisters especially. So I encourage you to now just pray and ask the Lord to reveal anyone that may be within your midst, in your church community, in your neighborhood even, that you would be able to help get out of this life, because it's not a life that someone wants to be in.
Okay, so if there aren't any questions from Ms. Dow presently, or if you have some later, please feel free to put them in the chat. At this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Bynum, Brandy Bynum. A special thanks to you as she is joining us from the East Coast. So I really appreciate that. I have had the pleasure of hearing Ms. Bynum speak on several webinars on human trafficking over the last couple of years. She is an expert in the subject. Not only is she an expert, they have put together a lot of material and regarding Blue Campaign, which she'll describe in more detail than I can. So that just shows me that her and her team are very creative and coming up with targeted material for not only youth, for faith-based communities, for law enforcement, for social service provider, etc. But she currently serves as the acting program manager and chief advisor for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS Blue Campaign in Washington, D.C. The Blue Campaign main focus is to bring public awareness to human trafficking in this indicator. She also leads the Blue Campaign prevention efforts to reduce victimization and vulnerabilities in communities and deterring criminal activity. Brandy brings 3 years of experience of raising public awareness of human trafficking and outreach. She also represents DHS on the Senior Policy Operating Group's Victim Services Committee and Public Awareness and Outreach Committee. Before starting her position at DHS in April 2018, Brandy served as a program analyst with the Recruitment Policy and Outreach Office located in Employee Services in the U.S. Office of Personnel Management in Washington, D.C. She's provided in-person and virtual webinars to over 100 schools in the United States to reach students interested in federal government careers and serve as the League of United Latin American Citizens League for OPM. Brandy also previously served 6 years with the U.S. Department of State as a human resources specialist in Charleston, South Carolina. She is a member of Young Government Leaders. Brandy graduated with a bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in human resources from North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Miss Brandy Bynum.
Thank you so much, Charlotta, and everybody for putting on this super important webinar in the Blue Campaign's Star Month, which is Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Again, my name is Brandy Bynum, and I am the program manager for the Department of Homeland Security's Blue Campaign. I won't be before you long because I know we've been on for a while, and the speakers before me did an excellent job talking about trafficking and grooming. So I want to finish and round out this webinar with some free resources that the Department of Homeland Security has created over the last several years, especially focusing on the faith-based community and youth, which has been a vulnerable community that we've been talking about today. So I'm going to share just a couple of slides because I know visuals help, as we're talking. So I just want to make sure this pops up. If somebody could let me know when it comes up, that would be great, just so you all are seeing what I'm seeing. Can you see the slides on the webinar? No?
No.
Okay. Let's see. It's showing. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna reshare. Let's see. How about now?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, so we are really quickly, for those of you that don't know who we are, and actually the slides aren't moving on my end.
They're moving here.
Oh, they are?
You're
okay, perfect.
You're on the third one about.
Okay, perfect. All right. Sorry, the platforms, I know we've been in this virtual environment for going on 3 years now, so thank you for your patience. But if you're not aware of who the Blue Campaign is, we are a national public awareness campaign located in headquarters, more specifically the Office of Partnership and Engagement here at the Department of Homeland Security. And we are here to raise awareness about human trafficking. We have trainings, we have social media, all the things to help the general public, law enforcement, vulnerable communities, and various industries learn about the indicators of human trafficking and how to appropriately respond. As you've heard on the webinar today, we believe that education is one of the first steps in combating the crime, because if somebody doesn't know what human trafficking looks like, then tips won't go to the hotlines like the National Human Trafficking Hotline or the DHS tip line, or to local law enforcement to catch these really bad people that are trafficking and exploiting men, women, and children. So that is primarily our primary goal here at the campaign, is to raise awareness through education and outreach. As mentioned before, we have a bunch of free resources that are publicly available on our website, which I'll share in a little bit. And at the Department of Homeland Security, we follow the 4P paradigm to combat trafficking, which the United States government adopted from the United Nations. And Charlotte went over those a little bit earlier, but those 4 Ps are prevention, protection, partnership, and prosecution. And at the campaign, we really focus on 3 of those 4 Ps. I always like to say we leave the 4th P, prosecution, to the Department of Justice. But we really focus on partnerships and strategic partnerships to get our public awareness materials out there to educate these different communities on raising awareness and understanding the indicators so that we can increase reporting to law enforcement. I do want to touch on Department of Homeland Security's fairly new Center for Countering Human Trafficking. And we are one office out of 16 components and offices that are located at CCHT for short. And basically this center just took all of the offices and components within the Department of Homeland Security and put us under one roof so that we can continue to combat trafficking holistically at the Department of Homeland Security. So I want to jump into the meat of what I came here to talk about, which are all the wonderful resources that we have available. As you can see on your screen, we have posters, we have infographics, we have brochures, toolkits, indicator cards, all the things, and they're free. They are free. If you go on our website, you can order them. We have a bunch of resources that on our webpage that we print in-house and then ship out to you for free to help raise awareness in your community. And then we also have all of our resources available for download and print if they're not available for shipping. And the really great thing about these resources that we consult individuals with lived experience or survivors on every piece of awareness material, because even though we are sometimes considered as SMEs, we want to make sure that these materials are relevant and that they're pushing out the messages that the department wants to push out, and that they're going to be usable by the end audience. So that's just one note I wanted to make. And then also, a lot of these materials are available in multiple languages, because we know that even though English is the primary language in the US, there are a bunch of other languages that are spoken. And as we've heard from our panelists before me, a victim of trafficking can be of any race, nationality, they can speak multiple languages. So we want to make sure that our materials are all inclusive to help raise awareness across the US. These are some of the materials that we've recently worked on. Well, this first video in the top left-hand corner of your screen is our most popular video. It's a 5-minute video that defines human trafficking, talks about the differences between human trafficking and human smuggling. So it's a quick 5-minute video that can give you the rundown, especially if you are wanting to raise awareness at your church or in your community. This is a video that you can incorporate in those trainings. It's available in both English and Spanish. And can be included in those activities to give your audience a quick rundown on what human trafficking is and then how to properly report. A new resource that we just worked on last year that I'm really proud of is the first of a 4-part series targeted toward youth, primarily 11 to 17, because as we heard from the panelists before, youth are a vulnerable community and they get groomed very easily. So we have a main character that is a person of color, because sometimes that can get lost in the shuffle. So I really wanted to be representative in this video. And Mia is our title character, and that's in the screenshot in the top right right-hand corner. And it follows her story on how she gets groomed and put into the life of trafficking. And each part focuses on a different person in her life, on indicators that they can recognize to help get her the services and connect it to the things that she needs. In the bottom left hand of your corner of your screen, we have a new video that focuses on raising awareness in the trucking industry and at convenience stores. And then we also have a bunch of different public service announcements that can be used at your leisure in both English and Spanish. We have a toolkit that we created specifically for the faith-based and community leaders. And I'm really proud of this toolkit. We worked with our DHS Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. And in this guide is everything kind of that the panelists talked about today and more. But this guide talks about the myths and realities of trafficking, trauma-informed approaches to victim services. We talk about indicators, how to volunteer during Human Trafficking Prevention Month, which is this month, and then also reporting options. And this toolkit is available right now on our website at www.dhs/bluecampaign. And each page in this toolkit can be used individually, can be put up in houses of worship or in different communities to help raise awareness about human trafficking. This is a new toolkit. I think somebody earlier asked a question about how to raise awareness with youth in your lives. Really excited that this is being presented today because we worked with survivors as well as SMEs and non-governmental organizations across the country to put this guide together. And it is for those adults that have children in their life, whether you're a parent, whether you're an auntie like me, whether you're a youth health caretaker, any individual that's either working with youth or has youth in your life. This toolkit will prepare you to foster that conversation about human trafficking with the youth in your life. I'm really proud about it. We talk about how traffickers operate, which we kind of talked about in this webinar. We talk about the myths and realities of human trafficking, because there are a lot of myths that, and I think Annie talked about this, that the media puts out there. We want to debunk those myths, especially when we talk about who trafficking affects and who traffickers can be. The indicators that are more specific to youth, the do's and don'ts when fostering that conversation, especially, and I'm not in law enforcement, I'm on the public awareness side, but we work hand in hand with special agents at Homeland Security investigations. And we know that traffickers start grooming very young. Very, very young. I'm not even going to get into the horror stories that I've heard, but having a conversation with the youth in your life, because there's already a level of trust there, is super important. And I'll just say there's never a child too young to start having the conversation. And so we go over different examples and different scenarios where we've worked with the Victim Assistance Program and Victim Assistance Specialists like Charletta to get those stories and put them in scenarios for the people that are going to be reading this, so that it can be realistic to help you and encourage you to start talking to the kids about this crime and what exploitation is and what it looks like. And then we also round out with reporting options so that you know where to report the crime. So all the resources that I've talked about today, and then all the resources that we have, which is in the hundreds in multiple languages, can be located and found at the email or the web address that's on your screen. That's dhs.gov/bluecampaign/library. And I'll throw it in the chat when I finish and can get out of sharing my screen. But we have multiple toolkits that are very targeted. What we've seen at the campaign is that there are a ton of indicators about human trafficking, but every industry, trafficking looks different, whether you're on an airplane, whether you're at a hotel, whether you're at a rest stop. And so we break that down so that it can be more easily digestible. Because I know before I got into this work, my example of trafficking was that movie Taken. And now now that I've been in this work for several years, I could not have been more wrong. And so one of my goals here while managing this program is making sure that what happened to me doesn't happen to the everyday person in the general public. So I hope that these resources are helpful to you. If you have young adults or college students, we have a really great college and university toolkit to help them understand what trafficking is and how they can participate in raising awareness on their campus. I know we're virtual, so we've updated our toolkit to include ways of hosting webinars and different things like that. So be sure to go to the website on your screen right now to download these products free of charge. And then the last couple of slides I just want to talk about, because we've already had a lot of great discussion about that so far, is about how to take action. And so you can host an event like this one. My team, we do events like these all year long, free of charge, whether it's webinars or coming in person. We want to come talk to you about raising awareness, defining the crime, indicators, and how to report, right? So host an event, whether it's with us or with another knowledgeable subject matter expert. You can share on social media. I think it was mentioned before that social media, especially in the environment that we're in now, with being at home most of the time in this COVID environment, is super important. So people are spending a lot more time on their phones or on their laptops and their mobile devices. So we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We post a lot, and everything is surrounded about human trafficking prevention. We also recommend that you connect with other faith and community leaders, and while using our resource to foster that conversation. And then Carletta talked about a little bit earlier about labor trafficking. I know we talk a lot about sex trafficking, but part of human trafficking is labor trafficking, and probably preaching to the choir, but labor trafficking in some areas is more prevalent than sex trafficking. So we want to be conscientious consumers, right? So there's a link here, and I'll put it in the chat, to make sure that the goods that we're buying are not produced by forced labor. And so another goal of mine with the campaign is to raise more awareness around labor trafficking, so that we know that the products that we're purchasing were not made via forced labor. And then, as Charlotta mentioned earlier too, January typically is proclaimed National Human Trafficking Prevention Month by the White House, and that is as such for 2022. So we want to do what we can during this month to raise awareness. Our biggest day of the year is January 11th, and I know we are 12 days past that, but we wear blue, which is the international symbolic color, to raise awareness about human trafficking. But like I mentioned, you can also host an event free of charge, virtually. Just open up a Zoom link. We'll speak to your community, promote hashtags. Universally, we use in human trafficking, or you can hashtag Blue Campaign or tackling trafficking to get more information on the different mini micro campaigns that we do throughout the year, that we partner with big and small organizations to get and raise awareness about human trafficking. We also have a monthly newsletter where we talk about everything at the Blue Campaign and highlight what the Department of Homeland Security is doing to raise awareness. So I'll drop this link in the chat too, and make sure that our hosts have it if you want to join our now 90+ subscribers, to just know about the free events that we have throughout the year, and how you can participate in combating trafficking. This is our contact information. As I mentioned, our website is dhs.gov/bluecampaign. You can email us at bluecampaign@hq.dhs.gov. And then I mentioned a couple slides ago, we are heavily on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more information. So I will yield my time and hand it back over to the host if there are no questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I was able to add some of the links that Ms. Bynum mentioned. So they're there. I didn't get all of them. So, but anyway, do we have any questions? Okay, so if there aren't any questions, you will have our contact information. And if not, Pastor McCoy does know how to get in touch with me, and I can definitely get you in direct contact with the speakers here today if some question come up later, or you want to just reach out to them to speak or whatever. And some of them have added their information in the chat box. But again, I want to thank Pastor McCoy and his congregation and friends for joining us today. You could have chose to be anywhere but today on a Saturday, but again, you chose to be here. So that speaks volumes right there. Also, we hope that we have met our objective today to help you understand that human trafficking does exist in a community. What are some of the indicators and how to reach out to help someone or help the community to eradicate this crime. You can get involved, and we hope we have inspired you to take action. And again, there's several ways you can take action, not just doing Human Trafficking Month, but today or anytime is a good time to start. You can help as an individual or a group, or as a church group organization. Just go out and help any way you can. There are plenty of impoverished, vulnerable people out in society that could really use a hand up, and with that we can combat some of this. So again, thank you for your time, and now I'm going to pass it over to Pastor McCoy to close us out.
Amen. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Ms. Cruz for putting this together and reaching out so that we could do this. And thank Ms. Loward and Ms. Dow and Ms. Bydom for their time and for what they have shared. This has truly been educational and enlightening. And we thank you guys for what you do and for you putting the time and effort into making a difference in our community and our culture and in the lives of our youth. Youth is very important to me. They're close to my heart. So we definitely will take what you have shared and see where we can plug in and support you guys as best as we can. So we're a young church, but part of our mission is to have an impact in our community and make a difference in the lives of our youth. So I thank you for that information, and I hope every parent was listening and took to heart. There's some things and conversations that we should be having with our children, because that is our most precious resource that we have. We need to be loving on them, educating them, so that they don't fall victim to human trafficking, labor trafficking, all of those things. So I hope this time has been a blessing to you, and I will make sure I share any information that you guys need. I will have it. Yes, ma'am. I will make sure that we're available and that we can get plugged in and get involved with some of these organizations and make sure that we support them, because at the end of the day, our goal as a church is to be involved and to serve. So thank you again, ladies, for what you do and taking time out of your day to share this information. So we probably will reach out to you again. This has been a straight talk, and I appreciate it. Anything, ladies, speakers, that you would like to share before we close out?
I have something. Pastor, I'm with you. Our youth is what we're fighting the enemy over. So I think it is so key that we all come together, educate, spend time, let our children know that we know what's going on, and let them know that we love them still, that they can come to us, that they can trust us, whether it be us as a parent or us as a leader in the church or us as even an auntie or an uncle. Let them know that we know and that there's nothing to be embarrassed about. If they get sucked in, we're here for them. Because a lot of what happens when people are trafficked is the shame. They feel ashamed that their parents will know, or that, other people will know, and therefore they stay in the life for fear of shame. And we need to let them know that they're loved unconditionally, regardless of what bad choices they may make.
Thank you. So I'm going to leave it right there, because at the end, the Bible calls us to love, and love covers a multitude of sins. And we need to open up our arms and embrace that community, and ensure that we give them the help without judgment, and just support them. And that is the key, because the one thing I tell everyone, what drew me to Jesus was that he didn't judge me. He loved me, and loved me past my issues and my problems and my circumstances, so that I could be healed and made whole. So It doesn't matter. We all have problems and things that we're struggling with. We should always keep that in mind. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to pray us out. And then I'm going to end this, and then I will see everybody on Sunday morning. So with that, bow your heads and eyes closed. Most heavenly gracious Father, we come praising you and worship you, Father. We come asking you to forgive us of the sins we've committed by word, thought, or deed, by omission and commission, Father. I thank you for this straight talk, oh God. I thank you for these women, Father, that took out of their time today to share their knowledge and to enlighten us, oh Lord. So God, I pray that we take this information and we act with it, Father. I pray, Father, that our doors are open and our hearts are open to this community, this vulnerable community, oh God, that we will have no judgment, that we will love them, because a wise man saves souls, Father. I pray, Father, that as we move forward, oh God, that you will make room at the Abundant Heart Community Church, Father, so that we will be able to support them, oh Lord. So God, whatever they need, I pray that you just provide it, Father. And God, I thank you for Miss Cruz. I thank you for Miss Dow. I thank you for Miss Lober. I thank you for Miss Bynum, Father. I again pray that everything that their hands touch will be successful, Father. I pray that you continue to order their steps, oh Lord. And I pray you do the same for everyone under the sound of my voice, oh Lord. God, I pray for our children, that you will touch them and keep them and protect them, Father. And I pray for those that are lost, and I pray for those that feel trapped, Lord. And I pray that you will provide a way out, oh Lord. And I pray now that we have this information, Father, that we will be more vigilant, oh God, and that we will act and do what we have been called to do, Father. We have called to serve and we're called to love. Love thy neighbor as thyself, Father. And we are called to carry the burdens of others. So God, I pray we just take this information and we share it and we act upon it, Lord. So God, I thank you again for this time, and I thank you again for all of the speakers and what they shared, Father. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
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 Yes, Miss Linda.
I know, I was just saying, praise God.
Amen. All right, guys, I love you. And to any of the speakers, if you need anything from me, Miss Cruz has my number. Please feel free to get it from her. Give me a phone call. We are looking for opportunities to get plugged in and being more involved in our community. So again, thank you for your time, and I love you all, and have a wonderful weekend.
Amen.
All right.
God bless you. Do the same.
Yes.
God bless you. Thank you, Pastor McCoy.
You're welcome,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Okay.
All right.
In a little bit, Pastor.
Annie.
God bless everyone. Y'all bless me today.
Amen.
Amen.